All right, hi everyone. Before we get started, we let other people jump on. If you'll take this moment and answer what you're having for lunch. We know it's lunchtime, which is why we are definitely doing this as a lunch and learn. So take your time eating and we'll get started here in about a few minutes. All right, we're gonna get started here in about 1 more minute. And thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day. Okay, we're gonna get started here. So thank you so much for joining our first parent webinar lunch series. We're gonna stop the poll. We know it's lunchtime, so let's just see what people are eating today, if we can. Kale Caesar salad, that is fantastic. So it sounds delicious. Again, thank you so much for joining. We're really excited to start our first ever parent webinar series. My name is Leah Friedman. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm the Vice President of WTEF, and I have our Head of Player Development, Alex Scheck, to my right, and Marquise Duncan also in the room, helping to get this program started. So again, thank you for your time. It's going to be a quick 30 minutes, but hopefully a lot of great information. So our agenda for the next 30 minutes, just welcome and introductions. And then today's topic is modified equipment and the importance of why we're using it and how we're implementing it at WTEF and sharing our pathway that Alex and the team have been working so hard on. And then we'll open it up to questions. I do want to say that this session is being recorded and we will share it out. And any questions that we don't get to or that you have throughout, by all means, put it into the chat. Marquise is monitoring it. And whatever we don't answer, we're happy to follow up in our email. So important for me to share our dream team that is working on not just this webinar series, but our programs at both our East Campus and our West Campus. So from left to right, Ronnie Goodall, who's our Director of Programs at our West Campus and also our Arthur Ashe Children's School program. Alex Scheck, again to my right, Head of Player Development at our East Campus. Jabari Cosby is our Senior Programs Manager at East, a former DC public school teacher. We have Janelle Nichols, Director of Programs at our East Campus. And at the end, Marquise Duncan, another teacher that we're so lucky to have on our team, who's a coach and then also a reading specialist. And I call them the dream team. I have the honor and privilege of working with them every day, but they are the ones that get the job done on the ground and lead our efforts both on the court and in the classroom. So if you haven't had a chance to connect with them one-on-one to talk about your child's progressions, both again on the court and in the classroom, for sure, let's reach out to them. We are here to work with you to develop those plans to achieve success, no matter if it's in tennis, math, English, you name it, and we want to work hand in hand with you. So modified equipment, I can tell you that a lot has changed over the years when it comes to how do we develop players. And the way that I grew up playing, the way that Alex grew up playing, and probably if any of you are players, things look a lot different. So Marquise, why don't we throw up our poll? And we'd love to know, do you know what color ball your child plays with? And so, you may have no idea what we're talking about, and that's okay. But we're just curious, of getting a standpoint. So I see some green and yellow coming in. I have no idea what you're talking about, which is totally fine, which is why we're here today. So I will tell you that, 80% of parents of tennis players actually don't play tennis themselves. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen. And this is why we're launching this program is we want to make sure that we're sharing all the information with you. So we'll go ahead and end this. Modified equipment was something that other countries, other federations have been using for years. And I will share with you, and again, my background was with the USTA, that, this country is a little bit further behind, and mandates started in our country as early as 2010, 2011. And so the video we're going to show you is something that did air about 10 years ago, but we thought this was a great way to kick off our discussion on why we use modified equipment. So we're going to share this next video with you. Let's see. Why won't it go? Oh, here we go.
Change is coming to tennis, and kids are leading the way. It's called 10 and Under Tennis, and it's a fun way for your kids to really learn the game. With courts and equipment modified to fit them, kids will develop faster and better and enjoy themselves along the way. So get your kids involved now. With 10 and Under Tennis, every child can learn to love the game.
So I think some of us were having some audio problems. We will send this video out to you all so you'll have it, and we'll make sure that we send a link directly in the email. It is still one of my favorite videos. Alex, I know that you talk a lot about other sports, and that video showed, baseball, soccer, basketball, right? So, before we get into each ball color, any thoughts on, why is tennis so reluctant to using the different size equipments and court sizes?
It's something that I think sports has been doing for a long time in the United States, but tennis has been, like you mentioned, a little bit further behind in that. I think maybe it's a more expensive sport. Okay, there's more equipment than your basketballs or your soccers or your baseballs. Baseball does have a lot of equipment, but maybe it was a little easier for other sports like those to kind of adopt, lowering the net heights for basketball, or the smallering of the goals and the fields. But tennis, you have your rackets, you have your balls, you have your court, you have the different ages. And I think, like you said, it's been about 10 years since we've started to kind of implement and integrate kind of this type of equipment and these court sizes into tennis, but it's definitely been, helping build us a foundation and having kids, be successful earlier on.
Awesome. So let's get into it. So again, this, as we review each ball color and, some of the parameters, just keep this in mind that this is across the country, and these competencies and, the parameters are coming from the United States Tennis Association. So this is nothing that, this is just for WTF. but this is something that is managed by the governing body of tennis across the country. So red ball is actually my favorite. I joke that if I were a kid growing up again, my dad used to say, and this is yellow ball an adult, but I would get a penny every time I got the ball over, and I'd miss a lot because I was using an adult sized racket, heavy racket. But now with a red ball, kids can rally. So Alex, really focusing on 8 and under, but talk to us about the importance of a red ball and how it helps a young player develop.
So this is probably the most different from how I grew up playing. I grew up playing on a full-size court, being, 78 by 36. And, including the double sidelines and et cetera. I played with a yellow tennis ball like this right here. And this is very different from, the tennis ball that we're looking at here. The red ball is a little bit larger. So it's hugely important, sizing the courts down for, an age appropriate level. The ball being a little bit bigger and also significantly slower. They take the compression out of the ball. They actually take about 75% of the compression out of the ball. And then the rackets, that was huge. I was 8 years old carrying around a Wilson Pro Staff that Pete Sampras used, and he's a grown man, playing professional tennis. Somehow I made it work, and I didn't quit the sport and had a lot of fun doing it. But, I think this is the most significant of our 10 and under stages. And what it does is it allows us to really have success with students early on. Nobody likes doing anything that they're not good at, and 6, 7, 8-year-olds, they can figure that out pretty quickly. I can't make contact with the ball. I'm not good. And this negative self-talk happens pretty early on, where they kind of lose their confidence. And then from losing their confidence, they actually stop playing the sport. So, I think one of the biggest impacts in using this modified equipment is to, get these kids to have success early on, keep them in the game, and then allow them to develop at their pace, and not just putting them on a, full size 78 by 36, court and with a big racket and, a yellow tennis ball that bounces significantly higher than these red balls. So, again, it gives them that success very early on. And that's what we're looking for them to have fun and have success on the court.
Awesome. I love to say we're building confidence and competence to move on. And I think another note for this part in red ball specifically, red balls now are actually being used not just for kids. So they're being used for adult beginners and then even for senior tennis. So the idea of red ball just being a kid's tennis ball now is totally gone, right? And even John Isner sometimes and other pros will warm up with a red ball because they can feel their spin. So let's move on. Like you said, different balls. Now we're moving to the orange ball. So we're stepping away from, playing horizontally, and now we're using a 60-foot court. But why do people not want to skip over the orange ball? What's so important about the orange ball? And now, with this court, now we can start to add even the transition game.
Yeah. So like Leah said, there's, we're starting to play vertically, not horizontally on the court. And this is your 36 by 60-foot court. And generally this is for our age ranges like 8, 9, 10, sometimes 11-year-olds. And we use this for our beginner 11-year-olds where, they're just starting the game, and we just, again, modify the court. So they don't have to move as much laterally or forward and backward. And it really simplifies the game for them. Just the court size alone, scaling it down, modifying it, to make it a little bit more manageable. The ball is actually the same size as this yellow ball, but it is decompressed about 50%. So the ball is going to move slower. It's not going to bounce as high. And that really helps developmentally, because when you're teaching a kid a forehand or a backhand, we want them to hit the ball in their strike zone, in the appropriate contact zone. If they're hitting the ball above their head, or if they're hitting the ball down by their ankles, that's not actually like developmentally appropriate for them to swing low to high, to keep their balance, to be able to kind of have a nice fluid swing. They're going to be straining kind of because they're leaning down or they're reaching up. So, really having that modified ball allows us to really, allow them to have more success hitting in their appropriate zones and having confidence, again, building confidence, building competence, both across, the game and having success doing it on a competitive level too. When we get them to play competition, again, there's a lot going on mentally. Oh, I'm playing somebody across the court from me. I might be playing with somebody next to me. Again, the smaller court size, the slower ball allows them to kind of just, everything slows down a little bit, and then hopefully they're having that success in competition, whether it's team match play or some sort of junior team tennis, USTAs. Again, it's about getting these kids success as early as possible playing the game, and developmentally them having fun playing the sport as much as possible.
So a couple of great points, right? I mean, injury prevention. So, again, the racket size is so important, especially when you move now to a 60-foot court, you're having to cover more space, and you're really working on the transition game, meaning coming up to the net, doing more volleys, hopefully learning how to serve and volley, something that a lot of college coaches look for if that is a goal of your family. But I think that's important to understand that injury prevention, using the right equipment size with a racket, but then also the court size being correct and smaller. Like you said, they're learning the fundamentals, and you talked about the sweet spot. So really understanding where you want to hit the ball and contact point. But something that we don't talk a lot about is the footwork, and there's different footwork being utilized on the court. And so making a court size smaller, actually we can now teach, a crossover step recovery. We can teach different movement on the volleys and overheads. So just something, again, we're not going to get into all of those details, but the court size and the racket size are so important at this stage. All right. Third ball, green ball. Again, something that I didn't grow up playing with. You didn't grow up playing with. Sometimes we see people jump from red to green, but we just shared, the importance of that orange ball. Green ball, Alex, talk to me, because at the court size, right? Same court size as, a yellow ball players, traditional, but, what is so important about that green ball?
Yeah, that green ball is really actually important. Actually, there's tournaments in Europe that actually only use the green ball. They're professional tennis tournaments, but they use the green ball. If anybody's ever played on clay, it's actually almost similar to playing on clay, but using the green ball on like a hard court. So if you know that a hard court is traditionally a faster tennis court, and a clay court is traditionally a slower tennis court, using a green ball on a hard court is almost like playing on a clay court. What that does is it allows you to, again, one, it's 25% slower than a yellow ball. It slows the game down. You learn how to keep the ball in play a little bit more. You're making less errors. You're using more tactics. You're understanding kind of the geometry of the tennis court and being able to kind of use the angles, understand how to, build endurance as a tennis player. As tennis players, we're out there all alone. We get a short, quick window before that next point starts. It's not like we can pass the ball to our teammate and take a little 10-second break, like in some other sports, whether it's basketball or football or hockey or any other sport. So, being able to utilize this green ball to teach across different, not only techniques, but tactics is really important for this age group. Again, that could be at a higher level, but when it comes to, students that are just coming to us, they're, 11, 12 years old. It slows the game down. We'll use this green ball sometimes on an orange, 60-foot court. And so as Leah mentioned, it's about sizing the court and modifying the equipment to, give that kid confidence and competence, as they develop as tennis players. It's not a demotion. It's not you're playing with an orange ball, you're playing with a green ball, but, oh, wait, let's take a step back. Let me have you go play with an orange ball. It's almost like, in boxing, they're sparring partners, right? Sometimes you're sparring bigger partners, sometimes you're sparring smaller partners and quicker partners, and as tennis coaches, we're looking at how to individualize our teaching to every kid as much as possible, because every kid is developmentally different. So it's important for us to kind of utilize these court sizes, these racket sizes, the balls, to help us customize a plan for our students to have success.
Oh, that's so great. I mean, again, I think the big factor, what you just said too, is there's so much fluidity, especially as you're progressing and transitioning from one ball to the next, that, you may be on a red ball court and start to transition using an orange ball, or, you may be on an orange ball court and rather than changing the ball and the court sides together, you may just change the ball first and then come back. So I think that's so important to understand that it's not a demotion. And it's, really making sure that we continue to keep challenges based on each child. Even in group settings, you can change different factors. So I love it. I love what you just said. All right, the yellow ball, again, we used to,
This is all we have.
this is all we had growing up. I'm definitely a better player than my college playing days now that, I've done so much work with the red and orange. And, I know that I can say that, like, my game got better as I got older from having coaching juniors, because the red ball and orange ball really allowed me to work on, my slice game, to be honest. So let's just go through the yellow ball quickly. Full size racket, which is a 27-inch, the court size, and then Alex, anything else with that yellow ball and what you look for before, a child, starts hitting with a yellow ball.
There's definitely, and we're implementing this here at East Campus, but there are USTA player development recommendations and competencies, and we're integrating those into our curriculum and how we're teaching here at East. But it's important for us to see our students, consistently hitting the ball within a strike zone, as at a really high clip, at a high percentage. I think that's a general for, when does one kid move to the next level? When does one kid move to the next ball? When does one kid move to the next court? When does one kid move to the next size racket? If we're seeing kids hit the ball above their head or below their knees, or and again, not consistently in their strike zone and that power zone that they have, then we're going to kind of be patient with moving them forward. But this big ball, this yellow ball is all we grew up with, and it's a full compression ball. So it bounces faster, it bounces higher. So as an athlete, as a young athlete, that movement is so important to be able to kind of be in the position to make contact with the ball at the right time. Tennis is a game of timing. It's a game of centimeters too at times. So for us, it's important that we're seeing that our students are making, good progress, developmentally appropriate, progress with their game.
So two things that you said there, right? You talked about USTA parameters. That's definitely something that we're going to talk about, after the first of the year, because USTA does now have requirements for ball color and tournament events. So we'll bring on somebody from hopefully USTA Mid-Atlantic to talk through that, because now you need an evaluation before, moving from orange to green and green to yellow for different tournaments. So I think that's great. And then the next point that you were talking about slipped my mind. Oh, I know what it was. You talked about that we grew up with a yellow ball. I think what is also important to, thank you, pass the ball. I think also what's important to say is that we were multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
And so, our next session that we're having in November, we are talking about the importance of athletic development and, long-term development. And I think that plays a factor. And, again, we were able to do this, but again, now we both would have started on a red and probably been great.
Yeah.
All right, we're excited to share this next slide with you all. Again, I want to share that this is a draft. This is a work in progress, but we wanted to show you. It is also something right now that we are implementing at East, and we're working towards it. And this is the player pathway. And I think it's also important to understand that, if you do have a 6 or 7 year old and they're playing with a yellow ball, we're not saying right now, like, we're moving you back to red. That's not what we're saying. But as we move forward, this is something that we're going to look at with competencies and evaluations. Alex, I know you and the team have been working closely on this, so I'll give you a few minutes just to really emphasize the fluidity of moving from the ball colors and what you're looking for.
Yeah, and as Leah said, like, we evaluate every student individually. So, we have 6-year-olds that are playing orange ball. We have 8-year-olds that are playing, or 9-year-olds that are playing with the yellow ball. If the group is appropriate for them, if, their confidence is there and their, technique and competence is there, we're going to encourage kids to move along that pathway. We're not going to rush them. We're going to encourage them. I like to say if a kid can handle, or he can control and he can have confidence hitting with a 27-inch racket, well, give him a 27-inch racket. Like, if he can do it competently. But that's, that can be challenging, and it depends on, the age of the student, the maturity of the student, both physically, mentally, emotionally, to kind of potentially play with older students, to play with a heavier racket. So again, as Leah said, these are reference points and these are guides. They're not rigid, and it's meant to be fluid as we, be consistent with our structure across both campuses. So as you can see, at the very, very bottom on the left-hand side is our TOTS program. So we have a lot of TOTS programs here at East Campus. We have some 2-year-olds that snuck in the program, and they are super fun to watch. But we're starting pretty early, and it's really fun to have them in the program. But from there's 3 different stages of red ball. You're going from red ball 1, which is our earliest stage, which is our ages 4 to 6-year-olds, to red ball 2 and 3. And the biggest difference between these red balls is basically beginner, intermediate, and advanced red ball. So stages 1, 2, and 3, 1 being beginner, 2 being intermediate, 3 being advanced. At the beginner level, we're teaching fundamentals, basics, the court, how to score, how to hold a racket, the basics of the strokes. At red ball 2 and 3, we start to develop tactics and technique. You've probably heard, if you've had a younger kid do a class, maybe come home and say, well, I'm not playing real tennis. Well, there's phases and stages to getting to play real
And it is real tennis,
and it is
they're
real
rallying,
tennis.
they're keeping score.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you'll see that at red ball 2 at intermediate and at red ball 3 advanced, where these kids are rallying, they're scoring, they're playing full matches. And they're playing just like an adult would on a regulation full size, 78 by 36 foot tennis court. So from those, 3 red ball stages, or 4 really with the TOTS, we go to orange 1 and orange 2, which are, for ages 8 years old to 10 years old. That's our orange ball. Again, kind of that modified 60-foot court. Again, beginner, think orange 1 is going to be your beginner, maybe intermediate, and orange 2 is going to be your intermediate to more advanced. We're teaching foundations and, technique, and not that we wouldn't teach that at the orange 2 level, but it's a lot more emphasis on the orange 1 than it is 2. So more play, more matches, competitive at orange 2. Then this is where our track splits. Our track splits recreational, which is the top that goes from green to high school program, and then to play for life. And then our performance, that would be, split into junior performance and high performance, and then potentially collegiate sports. How we've created this is essentially, there are some kids that just want to play high school tennis. And we want to be a place where everybody has a place to play here, and we can teach anybody that wants to play. So you don't have to be a professional tennis player to be a part of our program. You don't want to have to play collegiate sports to be a part of our program. We can create an environment where everybody feels welcome and everybody feels like they can learn the game at their own pace. And we're accepting of everybody's, goals and desires, and we hope to help reach those goals and desires for them when it comes to, tennis. So, again, that vertical track is kind of your orange 2, green to high school, and then play for life. And then the performance track is on the bottom, where it's junior performance, high school or high performance, and then, potentially collegiate sports as well. But again, this is our draft. This is something that's, working and very fluid, but, you'll probably start to see this a lot more with the organization.
Alex, thank you. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from this is it's not a race to the yellow ball. So, no matter if you're starting at 5 or 10, to continue to play through high school, even as an adult, I mean, that is a long journey. So it's not a race to the yellow ball. again, this is a draft. And we'll work through it and it's fluid. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. I want to, respect everyone's time, but again, thank you for joining us. Our next call, our next session is in November at 12 p.m. And we're excited to talk about the importance of athletic development and why we incorporate that into our programs and into our practices. And we'll also have a guest speaker, Dr. Carl Davies of the USTA, who wrote the USTA American Development Model. So with that, on behalf of our team, we thank you for sharing your lunch with us, and we look forward to seeing you in a month, and have a great rest of your week. Take care.